All right, so the breaking news this week, unexpected, but in June, things are slow. We'll take big stories like this. Mike Davis, as we thought last night, was leaving Texas Southern to go to Detroit Mercy. Now, here we are on Tuesday afternoon, maybe not the case. Let's get somebody in here who knows exactly what's going on or knows a little more than me. Jim Hicks. Jim is the co-host of The Chop Shop down in Houston at 102.5 KMAZ. So, Jim, you've been on this story for a while, and you were talking about this a couple of weeks ago. Let's start from there. What made you think before everyone else that there was something brewing at Texas Southern and Mike Davis might be on his way out?
Well, back at the end of May is when Antoine Davis obtained his release from the University of Houston. Antoine is a shooting guard from the class of 2018, and he's a top, he's a nationally recognized player. He played on the sneaker circuit in the Nike EYBL with the Houston Hoops. He actually was one of the leaders in three-pointers in that league last summer. Now, when he requested a release, I communicated with Mike Davis, which he's been a friend of mine since his days at Indiana. So I didn't know him when he came to Houston. So Mike Davis told me that you're going to be surprised when I asked him about how the destination and what's the plans for him and his son. So first of all, that's clue number one. If you're telling me I'm going to be surprised, then why in the hell would you think I would be surprised if Antoine Davis is going from U of H across the street to Texas Southern University? That's no surprise, because that's what we all thought was going to happen in the first place.
Right.
So that was a clue number one. Number two was a week later, right? Antoine had official visits set to Auburn in the SEC. Well, all of a sudden, that visit was canceled. You see, an official visit. Well, not only was that visit canceled, but other visits that were resumed after that with Georgia Tech, University of Georgia, and UTEP. Everything was tabled by the Davis family. That's a red flag. That means if you're tabling all of that, then why even? First of all, if you're going to TxSU, why would you even go through the motions of setting up official visits with those particular institutions? You see, red flag number two.
Yeah, and I think we judged it wrong because we just assumed when all that happened, like, okay, he's going to Texas Southern, done deal.
Yes, but he had these visits set up, and then you throw a nugget in the midst of connecting these dots, and you say, well, where's Mike Davis originally from? The state of Alabama. That's where his folks live. So that means that's where Antoine's grandparents live. That's where his cousins live. That's where you see.
Right.
So Auburn was possibly an option or a smokescreen, but in reality, that's where your folks. So worst came to worst, your son would be in good hands, but would be in a state where, you know how it is when kids go off to college. You want them to be, because if Mike Davis know he's going to Detroit Mercy, then at least you got your son at a spot, whereas he's playing in the SEC, and many kids dream of playing nowadays in one of the Power 5 conferences.
Right.
So those were the dots that I had been placed in front of me, and as I connected them, then the next thing came along the chain of events was about a week ago, Antoine went on social media and announced he was committing to TxSU. Right?
Right.
So, even though the spring signing period ended in April, people that commit now still can sign the scholarship papers. So it didn't make sense. I've been around too long. I've been doing this for 18 years, covering amateur basketball, and it's been based in this city. If you're going to commit to the school where your dad is coaching, which would be TxSU, then why didn't you sign the scholarship papers? You see?
Right.
So that was red flag number 3. And then at that point, we started thinking about it. Well, it's just a matter of time. Then I learned on the flip side up at Detroit Mercy, that they had 2 assistant coaches that had 2 sons that were members of the team this past season. Right? One of the assistant coaches was the best man or in the part of the wedding of the recent head coach who got fired. Right? So and that's Bakari Alexander. So my thing was, okay, what does that mean? Well, if you got 2 sons and one of these assistant coaches that were left in limbo has extreme ties with this staff. I mean, with the roster that's remaining coming back. They lose a lot. So now you have a situation where if Mike Davis comes, who does he get to keep? Who does he bring? Because that's the thing. Mike Davis has a son, Mike Jr., who was on his staff at Texas Southern. I know Mike Davis wants to take his son with him and put him on the road. Well, you only get 3 assistant coaches. So that probably was a nag in this thing that's hit a snag. And we learned on Tuesday afternoon that the athletic director of Detroit Mercy, named Robert Fowles, he is quoted by the Detroit Free Press as saying, in a text message to the newspaper up in Detroit, that the reports of Mike Davis being hired were erroneous. That's the word he used.
So this is where it gets messy, because last night, which I'm getting my days mixed up, Tuesday night, Texas Southern athletic director comes out and says, hey, Mike Davis told us this afternoon he's gone. Everybody in the world reports he's going to Detroit Mercy. Seems like a done deal. Now, today, what you just told us, the athletic director at Detroit Mercy says, not so fast. Like, that's really messy, right?
I mean, it is. And it's like I said, no matter how this plane lands, it's going to be an embarrassment on one side or the other of the fence. And as you mentioned, Charles McClellands, he's the athletic director at Texas Southern University. He did release a statement yesterday, he released a statement on Tuesday. And in his statement, he said, Coach Davis informed me late this afternoon that he was going to accept the head coaching position at Detroit Mercy. And he goes on to say that from our perspective, it's a sad day, but also a happy day for Coach Davis and his family. We'll start our national search immediately for his replacement, and I'm confident that we'll be able to fill that position in short order. That sounds to me like an athletic director who knows he has a job to fill.
Now, that also sounds like it breaks protocol. Now, I've been around a while like you. When somebody leaves to go to another school, you let the other school say that he's coming. You don't let that cat out of the bag. Now, if the media speculates and gets it from somewhere else, then the school that the coach is leaving usually goes the no comment, or, we don't have anything to say about that. But I thought it was kind of weird that he came out so quick after Davis told him, and he let everybody know where he was going. That seemed a little against protocol to me.
There you go. Kind of embarrassing, one side or the other. It doesn't. You're absolutely right. And now somebody's. I mean, what? Meanwhile, you have the board of directors at Texas Southern. They're going and trying to go back in the bag to go and try to, sweeten the pot for Mike Davis. I think he had a base salary of somewhere around the neighborhood of $250, $260 a year. Now that's his base. And you have to understand, we're talking about this. I don't think there's another head coach in the SWAC in basketball that had a more more of a base salary than Mike Davis. He got another $100,000 as a bonus for winning the SWAC this year. And then as part of his contract, he also gets a percentage of his guarantee games,
which he has a lot of. I mean, that's first.
So when you add all that up, that Texas Southern University head coaching spot can possibly generate around $500,000 a year.
Yeah,
for the head coach.
Right. Which
that's not counting no camps, no nothing.
In HBCU circles, that doesn't happen every day, if at all. Absolutely. And so here's where we know. So I'm quite sure there's going to be more. Obviously, this story is not over yet. We're going to get more, and now the thing that's kind of make it kind of not necessarily smell a little bit, kind of saddens it, because people, they think you've moved out, and before your chair can get cold, there's other guys trying to sit in it. So now you get to know who's trying to get your spot, get your gig. Now, does Mike Davis, do Texas Southern allow or retract and nullify the departure and let him come back if indeed something that fell through at Detroit Mercy? Those are questions that Texas Southern has to ask. And also, you have to look on top of one thing. There's musical chairs going on right now. The Prairie View A&M last week lost their athletic director. Ashley's on to Jackson State. Yep.
Well, we all know, there's no secret that Dr. Charles McClellands at Texas University, the current AD, he's in pursuit of the SWAC commissioner's job. That's an option. I don't know if he's going to get it. But that's the room. So, this is kind of like one of those things like, well, man. So if something is going on with Mike Davis, the president now is probably going to be involved. When normally the AD is the point guard on a hire. Well, if the AD, it's kind of flaky right now.
Right.
At TSU.
Talking with Jim Hicks. He's co-host of the Chop Shop on 102.5 KMAZ in Houston. This reminds me of, look, I'm on the part of the side that stopped watching the NFL, but what was the Patriots assistant coach who was leaving, getting announced, and then he ends up back in the same spot? It kind of is smelling like that a little bit.
I hope that it does not come out as an embarrassment for both sides. I just hope that the SWAC comes out smelling good on this, because that's what we care about first and foremost down in these neck of the woods. So I'm just hoping that this plane can land well for the SWAC in this aspect. I really do. And as well as for Mike Davis and his family.
Now, Jim, let me ask you this. He was quoted and on the record just not even a year ago, last July, when his name was coming up for a couple of different jobs. And he went on the record and said, look, it's going to take a miracle to get me out of Houston. Everything is going good here. I got what I want. And less than a year later, here we are where somebody hit a miracle or at least in that general direction. What were you buying it's going to take a miracle to get me out of Houston, or what was your thought thinking back on that?
Well, at the time, Mike Davis, sometimes we say it's going to take a miracle. Be careful what you wish for, because obviously that's a private institution, Detroit Mercy is, and so obviously, the cost of living in Detroit, it gets kind of chilly up there. Don't get it twisted. You're right there by the Canadian border. Right. But obviously, they're going to drop him a bag. And that's what sometimes that can be ciphered as a miracle.
Yeah, what's in that
the bag? Fall out the sky.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm looking at. And you look at it like this. It's an opportunity. It depends on what's in your vision. And Mike Davis, trust me, he loves H-Town. H-Town actually sprung him, because a lot of guys, they come, he's from Alabama and moved to Indiana, after he coached, started the Bobby Knight era, went to Indiana back at the turn of the millennium. I think it was class of 2000 and and like 2000 or 2001, something like that, when he went to Indy, when he was there and took over the reins, led the team to the Final Four. He beat Kevin Sampson with OU in the semifinals in Atlanta that year, and before losing in the championship game. And then Mike Davis goes back to Alabama, coaches at UAB. Before coming to Texas Southern. So, and when he came to TxSU, sometimes people, he was coming in passing. He did not think that it was going to be this good. And by default, remember now, you're talking about a guy who coached 6 years. First year he was ineligible to even go for postseason because of their APR. They were on probation after the Tony Harvey era, and the football coach Johnny Cole and those guys. So he goes. He could not recruit any freshmen for 4 to 5 years. They could not recruit any freshmen because of the APR, and so now Mike Davis, as a result, he had to go and get it done with junior college guys and transfers. Basically, in a nutshell, when they not this season, but 2 seasons ago, the average age of the Texas Southern University's team was 23 years old. That was the average age of the team.
That's older than some NBA teams.
Well, yeah, a couple of them. So you understand what's going on. So that means people wonder how TxSU was getting it done. Hell, you have a lot of these teams had 18, 19, 20-year-old guys playing against 23, 24-year-olds.
Right.
I mean, if you relate that to summer basketball, that's like a 17 and under team playing against a 13, 14 and under team. Who's supposed to win?
Right. Yeah.
But I think, it's a gold mine for any, looking forward. They say if it does work out for Mike Davis and he's gone, but the next coach coming in, their names already lining up around the block. A couple, you have different waves that float ashore, during the rumor mills, and I've confirmed a couple of them because people will contact people, and you have the lawyers will contact other people, and so my ear is kind of like to the street, and so I was able to find out a couple of people who definitely have interest in that job. Now, whether they're going to admit it or not publicly, that's a different thing. But I know that guys like even the assistant athletic director, Kevin Granger.
Now that's a name that I've seen online where people are like, hire him right now. What's his story?
Well, Kevin Granger played for Robert Mullen. He's from Mississippi. He was on that team when TxSU went to the dance and played Arkansas in the first round. And Kevin Granger was nursing had a hobbled leg, and TxSU, I think, took Arkansas. I think it was maybe overtime, or took them all the way to the brink. And Kevin Granger, he was basically limping up and down the court, actually limping. And so his legacy, he's the all-time leading scorer at the school, and his jersey is retired in the Raptors. He's the assistant athletic director under Charles McClellands. Well, Kevin Granger was a finalist for the job twice, and was passed over. So then the second time, the first time they went on and put him in administration and gave him the assistant AD gig. Well, now this job is wide open. Kevin Granger, his son is a sophomore on the current TxSU basketball team. So his son is a sophomore, and also Charles McClellan's son is a sophomore as well. He started like 2 games this year, midway through in conference play. Yes. So now what happens is there's a movement by some to say, well, give Kevin Granger a shot if he wanted. Now, the question is, with knowing that Charles McClellan is a possibility to leave for the SWAC position. Well, if that's the case, then I would assume only Kevin Granger can answer that. I would assume that once you put that suit and tie on, then you should be a lock to move right into the AD spot that will be vacated by your current supervisor.
Right.
That's what I think is the only thing that's holding that back. So a guy like Kevin Granger, you wouldn't expect him to be mashing the gas on this movement right now, because if you jump in this spot, what if the AD spot comes open? So that gives him, that's for Kevin Granger. And he's connected. He's connected in as far as, Kenny Smith. Every year, I know you've heard of the Kenny Smith All-Star Weekend at the NBA stuff. Guess who runs that party for Kenny Smith? Kevin Granger's the point. Is one of the guys who actually runs that thing every year.
Wow.
So, I mean, what does that have to do with TxSU? Well, guess what? That means Kevin Granger had the power to get Kenny Smith to come and do Midnight Madness.
Right.
You see?
Right. Yeah.
You see, little bitty things like that. That's the equivalent of having Drake at Kentucky for Midnight Madness. Little things like that. Kids go goo over that stuff.
Right.
Don't get it twisted.
Right.
To get one of the artists, the entertainment artists, to come out and perform. So those are things that people would do favors for our friends. Now, other names I'm hearing is Alvin Brooks Jr. He's the current assistant coach at University of Houston. He's from Houston, Texas. He's a Wheatley High School grad, and that's kind of like one of the most historic, legendary basketball programs in the state of Texas. History is Wheatley High School, especially back in those 70s when Alvin Brooks was in high school. Alvin Brooks he has more probably street cred than any college coach who's from Houston that's living right now. Alvin Brooks, everybody loves him, and the thing about him, he's on the back end, so that means he wouldn't be using TxSU as a stone. He's not going anywhere.
Right.
He's not, he's on his swan song. So that would be a thing where, you got a guy that has resources that can get players and is not going to use you to try to get somewhere else. Chris Walker, another Houston native. Chris Walker is from Milby High School in Houston. He played at Villanova, started as a freshman. He's been a college coach for 23 years. He's currently the associate head coach at Cal Berkeley. He's also been assistant coach at New Mexico, Pepperdine, Villanova, UMass, and there was an interim head coach at Texas Tech right before they hired Tubby Smith. And so Chris is a supreme recruiter, and he understands the component that's missing for a lot of people, and that's this new era of the sneaker ball and the new AAU stuff and how you get stuff done and that. Well, Chris is he's a scholar on that side of things.
Because he's been running those circles at the D1 level for years. Oh, man. Yes. And actually, Chris Walker was a consultant and had a paid, on contract with Under Armour, right? A 3-year deal leading into this year. Under Armour paid him a salary to try to get colleges to switch over their brand to Under Armour. Right. So guess what? Cal Berkeley, they used to wear the Jordan brand until this year. You know what they wear right now? Under Armour.
Guess what TxSU is switching to starting in 2018 season?
Under Armour.
So Chris Walker has ties in Maryland at the headquarters. And then, of course, Under Armour has now built another office in Portland, Oregon. That's where, along with Nike and Adidas, but their main headquarters is in Maryland. Right. So Chris Walker has ties there. So that can help out.
If he were to get the job, then the football coach is going to be his best buddy, because he's going to want to get as much extra Under Armour gear for his team as he can. Yeah, that would. And
you get it, and you see a lot of people may look at that and say, "What? That don't mean nothing." Well, guess what? For schools and like swag schools that are sometimes often budget strapped, that means a lot. If somebody can save you $50,000, $100,000, $250,000 on product, that means a whole lot, because you can pay 2 or 3 coaches with that money, your assistants. So those little things like that comes into play, and other guys, you have John Lucas III, and Ronnie Courtney was there before. The list is going to add on every time we wake up every morning, because once again, this right now, it seems like it's a soap opera, but I hope it ends soon. We're going to see how this thing turns in the next day or two.
And I mean, make no doubt about it, this is the number one with a bullet top coaching job in the SWAC. I mean, it's not even close for basketball.
I mean, you have to think about Houston, Texas. So Houston, Texas is one of the fertile grounds for talent, and you're talking about in the United States as far as metropolitan cities. Houston, there's not 5 cities greater in the nation than producing talent. So you hear this talent, even the ones that go away. Guess what? When they get ready to transfer, if something don't go right,
come back home.
Yeah, TxSU, you hold a net out there, and that's the thing. What makes it so attractive? You're talking about, and you really think about it. Think about how many schools are in the SWAC.
Actually, 10. That's the number 10.
So of those 10 SWAC schools, you got TxSU is in Houston. What you can Baton Rouge, Southern. Jackson State, Jackson, that's a city. But not many of those schools had the conference or not in a large city.
Right. All right.
And then you go and you narrow it down. How many of those schools are in a city that has an NFL football, an NBA team, a Major League Baseball team? You see now?
Yeah, no.
That's what makes Houston so attractive. That's why Houston is so attractive. And that's the thing. And so I understand anybody, this job, people be lining up around the building to get this gig.
Wow. So what do you think Mike Davis does now? He's got to lay really low for a minute till this kind of figure, till Detroit Mercy makes their next move. I guess the ball is in their court now, would you say?
Yes, and I'm quite sure Mike Davis probably has called his attorney at least 2 or 3 times a day to find out what the heck is going on. Because those things are not necessarily done by the coach themselves. It's that everybody has an agent. So your agent is in charge of tying those knots, when it comes to snags and details. So as far as Mike Davis knew, it was a done deal.
All right.
So he goes, and that's just how it goes. So I'm thinking that right now he's going to hold and stand faith. But either way, I'm quite sure, knowing Mike, he's going to come out very much okay. Knowing him,
right.
He's going to be all right.
Well, we will see. It is still a developing story. Someone who will have all of the details as they arise is Jim Hicks. You can follow him on Twitter. He is at RCS Sports. And if you're in Houston, you can catch him on the Chop Shop. That's Monday through Thursday from 12 to 2 on 102.5 KMAZ. Jim, thanks a lot for spending a few minutes with us. And, man, we're going to keep following this and see where this ride ends up.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's going to be a fun ride. Buckle up.